In California's history, some gang members have become infamous for their power, influence, and fearsome reputations. These individuals shaped the streets, ran empires, and left their mark on the state in ways few can forget. Whether through violent rivalries, massive criminal networks, or unmatched street savvy, they became legends in their own right. Today, we're diving into the stories of the 11 most notorious gang members California has ever seen. These are the names that sent shockwaves through neighborhoods, law enforcement, and even the media. From their rise to dominance to their eventual fall, each of these figures has a tale that reveals the darker side of California's streets. Let's take a look at who they were, how they became so powerful, and what set them apart from everyone else. Number 11. Billy Sylvester of the Aryan Brotherhood gang. Billy William Sylvester is a notable and dangerous figure within the notorious Aryan Brotherhood AB. Known for his commanding role in the gang's operations, Sylvester has spent most of his adult life behind bars, where he has orchestrated a range of illicit activities from within the prison system, particularly through the use of contraband phones to communicate and direct operations. Sylvester's criminal career, which began long before his imprisonment, has been marked by his involvement in a series of violent events and illicit trafficking schemes. While serving time in California's maximum security prisons, he rose to prominence within the Aryan Brotherhood, a group that controls large portions of the white inmate population and is heavily involved in illegal activities both inside and outside prison walls. Over the years, Sylvester was accused of overseeing and participating in numerous criminal ventures, including the distribution of illicit substances, racketeering, and ordering the elimination of rivals and perceived enemies. One of Sylvester's most significant criminal activities was his role in running a large-scale operation involving the smuggling and distribution of illicit substances. Alongside his associate Ronald Yandel, Sylvester directed the trafficking of narcotics and other illicit substances from their shared prison cell, using smuggled-in cell phones to maintain control over a network that spanned various counties and states. This operation allowed them to maintain a strong grip on both prison and street-level activities, controlling a large number of associates and gang members. Sylvester's involvement in orchestrating violent acts as part of the gang's activities also paints a picture of his dangerous nature. Number 9. Mario Rodriguez of the Nortenos gang. Mario Rodriguez is a member of the Nortenos, a notorious criminal street gang based in California. His story is marked by violence, reckless behavior, and a pattern of criminal activity that reflects the dangerous lifestyle often associated with gang affiliation. Rodriguez, who has been involved in multiple criminal events, has earned a reputation for his brazen attitude and his willingness to engage in violent acts, both as part of his gang activities and in defiance of law enforcement. Rodriguez's most prominent criminal act occurred in 2021 when he was involved in a double homicide in Salinas, California. The victims, a young couple, were targeted by Rodriguez and several other Nortenos in what prosecutors described as a reckless act of violence in an area known to be a rival's turf. The couple had no known ties to the rival gang, but Rodriguez and his associates, driven by gang-related motives, deliberately sought to strike at their enemies. Rodriguez personally shot and assassinated both victims. This act, carried out with the intent to bolster the Nortenos' reputation, was a clear demonstration of his commitment to the gang's criminal activities. In addition to the murders, Rodriguez's actions while in custody further demonstrated his dangerous nature. In March 2024, while awaiting trial, Rodriguez participated in a violent attack on several deputies at the Monterey County Jail. The incident began when deputies discovered an inmate violating jail rules by possessing tattoo equipment, an act that is strictly prohibited. Rodriguez and several other inmates surrounded the officers, and during the altercation, Rodriguez managed to seize a deputy's baton and strike the officer multiple times. The attack left several deputies injured, one of whom required hospital treatment. The violence was so severe that it resulted in Rodriguez facing charges for attempted manslaughter, assault with a deadly weapon, and battery with serious bodily injury. Rodriguez's criminal history also includes charges related to the possession of illicit substances and firearms, all tied to his gang affiliation. He has been convicted in the past for firearms possession with a gang enhancement, underscoring his readiness to carry weapons as part of his role in the Nortenos. His violent acts and involvement in illegal activities reflect the gang's broader criminal behavior, which includes robberies, assaults, and the trafficking of illicit substances. Rodriguez's criminal career has been characterized by a blatant disregard for the law and an unyielding loyalty to his gang. His actions suggest that he seeks to maintain and expand the gang's influence through fear and intimidation, using violence as a tool to settle scores and establish dominance. In 2024, Rodriguez pled guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter and assault with a deadly weapon on a peace officer. He was sentenced to life in prison for the double homicide and an additional 50 years to life for the assault on deputies. Number 8. Vincent Gerald Garcia of the Nuestra Familia gang. Vincent Gerald Garcia, a 55-year-old from Salinas, California, became a prominent and feared figure within the Nuestra Familia NF gang, one of the most notorious prison organizations in the United States. His criminal career, which spanned several decades, was marked by a ruthless rise through the ranks of the NF, ultimately securing his position as the regiment commander for the entire Monterey County region. This role gave Garcia unparalleled control over the criminal activities of gang members incarcerated in local jails, particularly at the Monterey County Jail. From 2012 to 2014, while behind bars, Garcia orchestrated numerous violent acts, including a series of gang-related assaults and attacks that earned him a reputation as a dangerous leader. Garcia's role within the NF was one of authority and decision-making. During the trial against Garcia, it was revealed that he approved and supervised multiple removals inside the Monterey County Jail. These operations typically involved a group of NF members, where one would stab the victim and others would follow up with brutal beatings. From 2012 to 2014, Garcia held a powerful position within the gang, dictating who would rise and who would fall within its ranks. He had the authority to strip fellow gang members of their roles, elevate others, and crucially, sanction attacks and retaliations. In many cases, these removals were not spontaneous, but pre-planned, showing Garcia's cold, methodical approach to leadership. Evidence also indicated that Garcia used his position to facilitate the illegal flow of controlled substances, which were sold within the jail and to other inmates. While marijuana was distributed selectively to trusted affiliates, more potent illicit substances were smuggled into the facility and sold to a broader range of individuals, further funding the NF's operations. The culmination of Garcia's violent career came when he and his co-defendant Jorge Jasso were convicted in June 2022. Both men were charged with engaging in multiple conspiracies that included racketeering, conspiracy to commit violent acts in aid of the gang, and orchestrating assaults. Garcia's conviction carried a lengthy sentence, 306 months in federal prison. While incarcerated, he had direct oversight of a gang faction in the jail, where he authorized violent acts and kept tight control over his subordinates. The evidence at trial showed that he was a key player in the planning of 10 separate violent incidents, reinforcing his image as a highly dangerous individual. Garcia's sentence of 306 months in federal prison ensures that he will remain behind bars for a significant period. He will serve time for crimes that include racketeering, conspiracy to commit violent acts, and conspiracy to assault others in furtherance of the gang's interests. Number 7. Raymond Lee Washington of the Crips gang. Raymond Lee Washington, born on August 14, 1953 in Los Angeles, California, was the youngest of 4 sons, growing up in a turbulent environment that would shape his path toward infamy. As a child, Raymond was known for his muscular build and readiness to defend himself. He was raised by his mother and stepfather after his parents separated when he was 2 years old. Despite his mother's belief that Raymond was a good kid who only fought in self-defense, others in the neighborhood saw a different side of him. They remembered Raymond as a bully who used his strength to control those around him, even though he sometimes directed that aggression at outsiders who threatened his neighborhood. By his teenage years, Raymond had developed a reputation for trouble, repeatedly clashing with the law and being expelled from various schools across Los Angeles. During the late 1960s, South Central Los Angeles was a breeding ground for youth crime, particularly in the Watts neighborhood. With the older African-American street gangs like the Slossons and Gladiators fading away, new gangs began to emerge, filling the void left behind. Raymond, still in his early teens, was drawn into this world and joined a local gang called the Avenues. However, a violent altercation with the gang leader's younger brother led to Raymond leaving the Avenues after being severely beaten in retaliation. Determined to carve out his own space in the gang culture, Raymond formed his gang, the Baby Avenues, recruiting other local youths to join him. This group would eventually evolve into what would become the Crips, one of the most notorious street gangs in Los Angeles. Raymond's criminal activities escalated rapidly, and by 1974, at the age of 21, he was arrested for a serious crime and sentenced to 5 years at Dual Vocational Institution, DVI, in Tracy, California. Raymond was now the first Crip to be incarcerated at DVI, a place known for its hardened criminal population. His presence at DVI was met with hostility from other established black prison groups, particularly the Black Muslims and the Black Guerrilla Family, who were determined to prevent the Crips from gaining a foothold in the prison. These groups viewed Raymond's efforts to recruit young African-American inmates into the Crips with disdain, and made it clear that his attempts to expand his gang's influence within DVI would not be tolerated. Raymond's time at DVI was marked by intense conflict, as he was held responsible by other inmates for the actions of the Crips on the streets of Los Angeles. As the Crips continued to clash with rival gangs in Los Angeles, inmates at DVI who had lost family members in these conflicts directed their anger toward Raymond. After serving his sentence, Raymond was released from DV1 in 1976 and returned to Los Angeles. However, he found a city that had changed dramatically during his time in prison. The violence between the Crips, Bloods, and other gangs had escalated to new heights, with firearms becoming the weapon of choice in conflicts that were once settled with fists. Raymond was reportedly shocked by this development, as the gang culture he had helped to create had grown far more deadly in his absence. Raymond's life came to a tragic end on August 9, 1979, just 5 days shy of his 26th birthday. That night, he was approached by individuals in a car while standing on the corner of East 64th Street and South San Pedro Street in South Central Los Angeles. Raymond, who typically avoided interacting with strangers, seemed to recognize the occupants of the vehicle and engaged in a brief conversation with them. Suddenly, one of the individuals pulled out a sawed-off firearm and targeted Raymond, inflicting fatal injuries. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Raymond did not survive. Number 6. Eugene Big U Henley of the Crips gang. Eugene Big U. Henley was a key figure in the notorious world of Los Angeles street gangs, known especially for his involvement in the Rollin' 60 Crips, one of the most recognized factions within the larger Crips network. A well-known and respected leader in the gang community, Henley became a symbol of both the power and the perils of gang life in South Los Angeles. Born and raised in Los Angeles, Henley quickly rose through the ranks of the Rollin' 60s, a heavily armed and influential Crip set based in Southwest LA. Despite often denying his affiliation with the gang, law enforcement and gang experts consistently labeled him as a top leader, with many considering him the dominant figure in the Rollin' 60s. Henley's criminal activities spanned across a range of illegal enterprises, with his name becoming synonymous with both strategic leadership and dangerous street operations. His rise to power was marked by his involvement in high-risk activities and an ability to command respect from other members and rival gang leaders alike. Henley's criminal career included multiple illegal operations, including attempts to steal illicit substances from undercover agents. In one of the more infamous episodes of his life, in 1994, he was arrested during a sting operation. Henley, along with his associate Eddie Wagner, tried to rob an undercover officer who they mistakenly believed was a narcotic dealer with a large stash of illicit substances. Henley had arrived on the scene armed, demanding the officer hand over the materials, but the situation quickly turned against him when officers monitoring the exchange moved in to arrest him and Wagner. The attempted robbery led to Henley's conviction and a sentence of 23 years in prison, with Wagner receiving a slightly longer term of 32 years. Despite his arrest, Henley's reputation in the gang world remained intact. He was viewed as a dangerous and influential leader, not only for his role in orchestrating violent encounters, but also for his ability to broker peace, albeit temporarily, within the gang community. One notable example came after the tragic demise of rapper Nipsey Hussle in 2019. Hussle, like Henley, was affiliated with the Rollin' 60s and had worked to bridge gaps between rival gang factions through music and community activism. In the wake of Hussle's demise, Henley played a role in organizing peace talks, urging gang members to reflect on the consequences of violence and urging for ceasefires. In addition to managing street-level activities, Henley had been involved in negotiations with other gang leaders, particularly in the aftermath of major losses in gang wars and other violent confrontations. In terms of his legal struggles, Henley's conviction for the attempted robbery marked a significant moment in his life, taking him off the streets and out of the gang leadership role for a time. While in prison, Henley's influence did not wane, and many continued to see him as an important figure in the Rollin' 60 network. Reports suggested that he maintained communication with other gang members and played a behind-the-scenes role in orchestrating some of the ongoing dynamics between Crips and rival gangs. Number 5. Cleman Johnson of the 89 Family Swans, a violent blood gang-affiliated gang. Cleman Big Evil. Johnson, a notorious figure from the 1990s gang scene in Los Angeles, became infamous as the leader of the 89 Family Swans, a violent subset of the Bloods. His criminal activities, marked by brutality and fear, made him one of the most feared and dangerous individuals in the Los Angeles gang landscape. The 89 Family Swans, operating primarily in South Los Angeles, were notorious for their violent acts, which included orchestrating attacks on rival groups and individuals in their turf. Johnson's rise to prominence within the gang was both swift and ruthless. While serving time for a narcotic-related charge in the early 90s, he was able to exert considerable influence over his gang from behind bars. Through coded phone calls and messages, he directed his associates to carry out violent tasks on his behalf, a level of control that baffled law enforcement. The assassinated attributed to Johnson and his gang were numerous, with police estimating more than 20 incidents, while Johnson himself admitted to at least 13. In one of the most chilling accounts, Johnson's gang was linked to the shooting of Peyton Burrois and Donald Ray Loggins at a car wash in South Los Angeles in 1991. This event, among others, would eventually lead to Johnson's arrest and conviction. Johnson was described by law enforcement as a cold, calculating figure, willing to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to his gang's interests or personal dominance. He was known to issue orders for violent actions with chilling nonchalance, and his gang's brutal methods instilled fear throughout the community. Detectives and FBI agents involved in the case have often stated that Johnson was not only dangerous, but seemed impervious to the consequences of his actions, always managing to evade prosecution for years due to the culture of silence that his intimidation fostered. At the height of his criminal career, Johnson was known to have little regard for life, as evidenced by the countless stories of people within his community being forced into silence through intimidation. He was even suspected of ordering hits on law enforcement officers, including one on Detective Thomas Matthew, who had investigated him for years. Johnson's capacity for violence was matched by his manipulative nature, as he often appeared charming and personable when it suited him, only to turn violent without warning. However, Johnson's reign eventually faced significant challenges in the courtroom. His 1997 conviction for the manslaughters of Berrois and Loggins led to a death sentence, but this verdict was not final. In the years following his conviction, Johnson's legal team was able to challenge the case, citing issues such as racial bias from the lead LAPD detective and a delay in turning over crucial evidence to the defense. After a retrial, Johnson was no longer facing the death penalty, but was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. He had already spent more than 25 years behind bars by that point, making him eligible for parole. Number 4. Gustavo Perez Ariaga of the Surenos gang. Gustavo Perez Ariaga, a 33-year-old Mexican national, is a figure whose criminal activities have left a lasting impact on law enforcement and the communities he terrorized. Known for his affiliation with the Surenos, a violent Mexican-American street gang, Ariaga's life story is steeped in violence, criminality, and illegal immigration. Born in Mexico, Ariaga's journey to the U.S. was marked by a series of criminal behaviors that would eventually lead to a high-profile arrest in December 2018. Ariaga's connection to the Surenos gang is a significant part of his identity. The Surenos, which translates to Southerners in Spanish, are a street gang that primarily operates in Southern California but has expanded across the U.S. Their ties to the Mexican Mafia, a powerful prison gang, are well documented. Surenos members are notorious for their involvement in various illegal enterprises, including narcotics trafficking, human smuggling, extortion, and violent confrontations with rival gangs, especially the Nortenos. As a member of the Surenos, Ariaga embraced the gang's violent culture, which often involves using violence to resolve disputes and maintain control over territory. Ariaga's criminal history is troubling, with 2 prior arrests for driving under the influence. These offenses were relatively minor compared to his more serious crimes. His most notorious act occurred on December 26, 2018, when Ariaga, under the influence of alcohol, was stopped by Corporal Ronil Singh of the Newman Police Department for suspected DUI. During the stop, Ariaga pulled out a firearm and shot Singh, assassinating him in cold blood. Singh, a 33-year-old officer, was a beloved member of the Newman community. His demise sparked a statewide manhunt, and Ariaga's background as a gang member quickly came to light, with authorities identifying him by tattoos and social media posts that proudly displayed his Surenos affiliation. In the days following the shooting, Ariaga fled the scene, and authorities soon discovered that he had crossed into the U.S. illegally from Mexico several years earlier. He had been working on farms in California's Central Valley, but law enforcement officials had little knowledge of his criminal history until the tragic incident with Officer Singh. Ariaga's escape was aided by several individuals, including his brother, Adrian Vergen, and other associates, who helped him evade capture as he attempted to flee to Mexico. The manhunt culminated in Ariaga's arrest on December 28, 2018, in Bakersfield, California, where law enforcement officers found him at a residence after an intense search. Ariaga's arrest was just the beginning of his legal troubles. He was charged with multiple serious offenses, including the death of Officer Singh. Number 3. Freddy Ivan Jandres Parada of the MS-13 gang. Freddy Ivan Jandres Parada, also known by the aliases Lucky de Parkview and Lackey de Parkview, is a high-ranking member of the notorious transnational criminal gang known as La Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13. As one of the key leaders of the gang's powerful structure, Jandres Parada's role in directing criminal activity across multiple countries has made him one of the most dangerous figures in the organization. His criminal history spans decades and includes a wide range of illicit activities, from orchestrating violent acts to trafficking illicit substances. Jandres Parada's involvement with MS-13 traces back to the early 2000s, where he quickly rose through the ranks of the gang. He was a part of the Ranfla Nacional, the gang's central leadership group, which oversees operations in countries such as El Salvador, Mexico, and the United States. This position placed him at the heart of the organization's most violent and lucrative operations. Under his leadership, MS-13 became a highly structured, hierarchical criminal group capable of executing sophisticated international crimes. The Ranfla Nacional directed a range of activities, including extortion, narcotic trafficking, human smuggling, and acts of violence intended to maintain control over territories and intimidate rivals. Jandres Parada was implicated in numerous criminal events, including the planning and coordination of violent confrontations with law enforcement, rival gangs, and civilians. He was deeply involved in expanding MS-13's influence across borders, forging connections with Mexican narcotic cartels such as the Zetas and the Sinaloa cartel to facilitate the distribution of illicit substances. His activities also included coordinating training camps to teach gang members military tactics, preparing them to resist law enforcement efforts, and carry out brutal attacks on enemies. In 2020, Jandres Parada was indicted by federal prosecutors in the United States for his role in MS-13's global criminal network. He was charged with conspiracy to provide and conceal material support to terrorists, as well as engaging in acts that transcended national boundaries. This indictment was the result of years of investigation, as authorities uncovered the extent of MS-13's activities, which included the use of military-grade weapons and explosives to threaten public safety. Jandres Parada's connection to these violent acts was central to the case, and he was labeled as one of the most dangerous figures in MS-13's leadership. After being named a fugitive in 2021, Jandres Parada remained on the run for over 3 years, evading capture through various means. However, on March 7, 2024, he was finally arrested in San Diego, California, by a joint operation between the FBI and Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. His arrest marked the end of a long pursuit, with authorities hailing it as a significant blow to MS-13. At the time of his arrest, Jandres Parada was being held in a federal detention facility in San Diego, awaiting transfer to New York for trial. If convicted, he faces the possibility of life imprisonment. Throughout his years as a leader, Jandres Parada's influence extended far beyond the borders of the United States. He played a central role in directing MS-13's operations in El Salvador, using violence to manipulate political outcomes and extort resources from local communities. Number 2. Timothy Joseph McGee of the Tunerville Rifa 13 gang. Raised in Atwater Village, a neighborhood marked by gang activity, McGee's early life was steeped in crime. By the age of 16, he was already involved in an assault with a firearm, an indication of the violent path his life would take. Over the years, McGee's reputation grew within the ranks of the Tunerville Rifa 13, TVR, a powerful gang based in Los Angeles. He quickly rose to a leadership position, known for his ruthless demeanor and violent tactics. McGee's criminal activities escalated after he joined TVR, where he played a significant role in conflicts with rival gangs. In 1997, during a parole period, he allegedly chased 2 members of the rival Frogtown gang, shooting one in the back, leaving him paralyzed, and attempting to terminate the other. That same year, McGee is believed to have committed his first fatal act, the demise of 23-year-old Ronnie Martin, a member of Frogtown, who was shot 28 times. McGee's involvement in such crimes earned him a reputation as a dangerous figure within the gang world. After being sent back to prison for parole violations, McGee's criminal behavior didn't cease. Upon release, he was involved in a deadly shooting outside a recording studio in 1999, where a bodyguard was assassinated and multiple others were wounded. While the incident initially seemed tied to a music-related dispute, it was later linked to McGee and his gang activities. McGee's willingness to use extreme violence as a tool for maintaining control and intimidating rivals became evident as his violent spree continued. In the early 2000s, McGee's criminal record grew even darker. In 2000, he was implicated in several shootings, including the demise of 16-year-old Ryan Gonzalez, a member of a rival gang. McGee was also accused of orchestrating an ambush on 2 LAPD officers. The officers were attacked during a pursuit of suspects involved in a robbery, with McGee allegedly using a police scanner to track their movements and set up an ambush. Though the officers survived, the incident showed the lengths to which McGee would go to confront law enforcement. McGee's pattern of violence continued with the murder of Marjorie Mendoza in 2001, when McGee, along with another gang member, ambushed a vehicle, killing Mendoza in a revenge attack. This crime, along with others, further cemented McGee's role as a feared leader in the gang. His violent actions were not only aimed at rival gang members, but also extended to anyone he perceived as a threat, including individuals who might testify against him. In 2003, after a nationwide manhunt, McGee was captured in Bullhead City, Arizona, after being on the run for several years. His capture was the culmination of efforts by local, state, and federal law enforcement, and he was eventually extradited to California. The legal proceedings against McGee were lengthy and complex. In 2007, he was convicted of multiple charges, including the demise of 3 individuals, and was sentenced to death. His conviction included charges for attempted manslaughter related to the LAPD ambush, as well as a series of violent incidents that spanned over several years. However, McGee's death sentence was not carried out due to a moratorium on executions imposed by California Governor Gavin Newsom in 2019. As a result, McGee was transferred from death row to the general population at Salinas Valley State Prison, where he currently serves a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Number 1. Todd Ashker of the Aryan Brotherhood gang. Todd Ashker's path into the darkest corners of America's prison system began with a burglary conviction in 1982, a seemingly small crime that would pave the way for a much more sinister journey. Entering the California prison system, Ashker, a man who would later become notorious within the Aryan Brotherhood, was still a relatively young and impressionable figure. But the confines of prison life, combined with the brutal realities of gang culture, quickly transformed him into one of the most feared inmates. By 1987, Ashker's involvement in the Aryan Brotherhood had deepened. It was at Folsom State Prison, just 5 years after his initial burglary conviction, that Ashker's notoriety began to take shape. In an incident that would mark him as a key player in the gang, Ashker stabbed another inmate to death. This was not just an act of random violence, but a hit ordered by the Aryan Brotherhood, illustrating his willingness to do whatever was necessary to rise within the gang's ranks. And during his butchery trial for the Folsom stabbing, the courtroom drama took a bizarre and violent turn. Ashker's court-appointed attorney, Philip Cousins, was attacked in a holding area by the same inmate whom he planned to call as a witness when the man, a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, stabbed him with a prison-made knife. The attack, seemingly an attempt to intimidate or derail the legal proceedings, was a clear demonstration of Ashker's influence in the gang and the lengths to which he would go to protect his personal interest. Cousins, who survived the attack, continued with the trial, though the judge's decision not to declare a mistrial only highlighted the perilous environment surrounding Ashker's case. And for the stabbing of an inmate at Folsom State Prison in 1987, he was served 21 years to a life sentence in prison walls. Following his conviction for the Folsom stabbing, Ashker was transferred to Pelican Bay State Prison, a facility known for housing some of the most dangerous inmates in the United States. Arriving in 1990, Ashker entered the prison's notorious security housing unit. It was here that Ashker's reputation as a leader within the Aryan Brotherhood was solidified. At Pelican Bay, Ashker continued to orchestrate violent activities, both inside and outside the prison walls. His role in the Aryan Brotherhood involved planning and ordering attacks on other inmates, often for perceived slights or to maintain control within the prison's rigid power structure. The gang relied on members like Ashker to execute its violent agenda. His involvement in numerous assaults and his ability to command respect through fear made him a central figure in the gang's operations. One of the most notable aspects of Ashker's time at Pelican Bay was his involvement in a hunger strike that began in 2013. While the strike was initially aimed at protesting the conditions in the SHU, it also brought attention to the use of solitary confinement as a tool to control gang leaders like Ashker. The strike, which Ashker played a key role in organizing, ultimately led to significant changes in California's prison system, including reforms in how solitary confinement was used. However, Ashker's motivations were seen by some as an extension of his desire to maintain control and influence, even from within the confines of the SHU. Today, Todd Ashker remains incarcerated in Pelican Bay State's prison, where he continues to serve his prison sentence.